The email came at 9:14 a.m. sharp, subject line bold and cold. Rent adjustment notice. I was sipping my second cup of coffee, watching the Manhattan skyline blush in the morning light when I opened it. $4,800. That was the new rent my sister, Vanessa, had decided I should pay for the apartment I'd lived in for years. The same place she once begged me to move into so we could stay close. I leaned back in my chair, silk blouse brushing softly against my skin, the faint scent of jasmine perfume lingering from my morning routine. Outside, the city pulsed, people chasing trains, dreams, and deadlines. Inside, my phone buzzed again, another message from her lawyer this time. Failure to comply within 10 business days will result in eviction proceedings. For a second, I almost laughed. Vanessa always did have a flair for theatrics. Still, a familiar ache curled in my chest, part anger, part disbelief. My own sister, turning greed into a weapon. She must have thought I was still that girl who once cried over overdue bills and begged for extensions. I glanced at my reflection in the glass, steady eyes, unflinching smile. She had no idea who she was dealing with now. I closed the email, reached for my phone, and whispered to myself, "All right, Vanessa. If it's war you want." I slid on my heels, grabbed my keys, and headed out. Let's play. 3 years ago, I was standing in the same hallway that now carried my sister's name in polished brass letters, Vanessa Reed, property manager. Back then, my confidence was thinner than the cheap carpet under my feet. I'd just lost my job at the design firm and couldn't afford my half of the rent. Vanessa had been all smiles when she offered me one of her building's smaller apartments. "Family discount," she'd said, flipping her hair like she was doing me a favor. I was desperate, so I took it. For a while, it worked. I paid on time, kept quiet, and tried to rebuild. But something in Vanessa changed the moment I depended on her. She dropped by unannounced, criticizing everything. The dusty windowsills, the paint color I'd chosen, even the way I folded my laundry. It wasn't help. It was control disguised as concern. One afternoon, I came home to find a bright orange late notice taped to my door. I wasn't late. When I called her, she said lightly, "Oh, maybe it's a mistake. But just a heads up, rents are going up next month. Market adjustment." That was her way of saying, "You'll never get ahead of me." That night, I cried until my eyes burned. The city outside my window felt too big, too cruel. But as I packed my boxes, my hand brushed against a small velvet pouch, my mother's bracelet, the one she'd given me before she passed. Inside was a tiny engraved quote she'd added herself. "Own your space, baby girl. Don't let anyone rent your worth." I remember sitting there, the words cutting through my fog like sunlight. Something shifted in me. The next morning, I left Vanessa's apartment key on the counter and walked out. No plan. No job. Just one suitcase, a stack of resumes, and a promise to myself. Never again would I beg for a place to belong. Starting over in New York with nothing but a suitcase and my mother's bracelet felt like jumping without a parachute. I crashed at a friend's couch in Brooklyn, working shifts at a diner by day and scrolling through job listings by night. Most of them paid next to nothing. But one ad caught my eye, real estate assistant. Must be persistent, organized, and unafraid of rejection. Persistent? That I could do. My boss, Eleanor Brooks, was a powerhouse, mid-50s, sharp suits, sharper mind. The kind of woman who'd survived 3 market crashes and still wore red lipstick to every meeting. On my first day, she looked me over and said, "You've got good eyes. Observant. Don't waste that on self-pity." Under her, I learned everything: contracts, client negotiations, how to walk into a boardroom full of men who'd rather pretend I wasn't there and leave with their signatures anyway. Eleanor believed in me more than I did in myself. There were nights I came home so exhausted I'd fall asleep in my clothes. But every time doubt crept in, I'd touch that bracelet and whisper, "Own your space." Slowly, things changed. I got my realtor's license, closed my first deal, then another. Eleanor cheered me on like a proud aunt. 2 years in, I had saved enough for a down payment on a rundown duplex in Queens. I refinanced, renovated, rented. One property became 3, then 5. I built a small company, Amber Grace Properties, quietly buying, restoring, and managing buildings under a trust name. All the while, Vanessa still sent the occasional holiday text, usually a brag disguised as a "How are you?" message. I kept my responses polite but vague. She still thought I was living small, scraping by in some rented room, struggling like before. And honestly, I preferred it that way. There was power in being underestimated. The first time I signed a deed with my own name beside the words, "Owner of record," I felt my throat tighten. Not from pride, but from disbelief. The girl who once couldn't afford rent now owned entire buildings. Eleanor retired last spring, handing me her Rolodex and a glass of champagne. "You're ready," she'd said. "Now go make space for yourself, and then build more for others." I did exactly that. And when a commercial listing crossed my desk, Vanessa's building, I didn't even hesitate. The numbers made sense. The deal was clean. Within weeks, I signed the papers quietly through my trust. Vanessa never knew. Not until that morning when she tried to raise my rent to $4,800. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime, revealing the same marble-floored lobby where I once waited, broke and embarrassed, for my sister to fit me into her schedule. Now, 3 years later, I walked through those same doors in a tailored navy suit and heels that clicked with quiet confidence. The receptionist looked up. "Ms. Reed, your sister and her attorneys are in conference room B." "Thank you," I said smoothly. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and tension. Vanessa sat at the far end of the table, her blonde hair perfectly curled, a silk blouse the color of money. 2 lawyers flanked her, all smug smiles and sharp pens. She looked up, feigning surprise. "Amber, you came." "I did," I replied, setting my bag down. "You said it was urgent." Her voice was sweet and brittle. "Well, you've been underpaying rent for months. Market values changed, and I can't keep subsidizing you. It's nothing personal, just business." Just business. Her favorite phrase when she wanted to wound, without guilt. One of the lawyers slid a folder toward me. "Here are the new lease terms. You'll notice the increase is effective immediately." I skimmed the papers, taking my time. Every clause was meant to corner me, every paragraph dripping with arrogance. Then I smiled. "Interesting," I murmured. "But there's one small issue." Vanessa leaned forward. "And what's that?" I looked up, meeting her eyes. "You don't own this building anymore." The silence was immediate, sharp and echoing. One of the lawyers blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" I reached into my bag and placed a manila folder on the table. The deed, the purchase agreement, and a fresh ownership certificate with my signature at the bottom. Vanessa's face drained of color. "You're lying." "Am I?" I turned the documents toward her. "Amber Grace Properties. You remember that name, don't you? I bought the building 8 months ago from your old partner. Didn't your accountant mention the transfer?" Her jaw clenched, eyes darting to the lawyers, who suddenly looked very interested in the table. She whispered, You bought my building?" I stood, smoothing my blazer. "No, Vanessa. I bought the building. The one you used to own. The one where you tried to humiliate me." For a moment, she said nothing. Just sat there, fingers trembling against the edge of her designer notebook. I could see her pride fighting to breathe under the weight of her shock. I walked toward the window, looking down at the street below. People rushing, horns blaring, life moving forward. "You know," I said softly, "you taught me something valuable. When you raised my rent, you pushed me to own instead of rent. Turns out, that lesson paid off." Vanessa swallowed hard. "So, what happens now?" I turned back, meeting her gaze head-on. "Now, we discuss your lease. I don't throw anyone out without notice, not even family. But the terms have changed." Her lips parted, to argue, to beg, maybe both, but I cut her off gently. "We'll go over everything in my office upstairs." "Oh, and Vanessa?" She blinked. "What?" I smiled. Next time you send someone a rent notice, make sure you know who owns the building. Her lawyers quietly packed their folders. No one spoke as I walked out, heels clicking like punctuation marks to the end of a very long sentence. For the first time, it was Vanessa left sitting in silence, and me walking away on my own terms. Later that afternoon, Vanessa sat across from me in my corner office, the very top floor of the same building she once ruled over. The skyline glittered through the glass behind me, sunlight spilling across polished oak and framed photos of the properties I'd restored. Vanessa looked small, out of place, like a woman who'd walked into her own past and found it rewritten. I poured her coffee, sliding the cup across the desk. "Cream and 2 sugars, right?" I asked lightly. She nodded, her eyes glassy. "Amber," she began, voice trembling. "I didn't know. If I'd known you, you'd have treated me differently?" I interrupted softly. Her shoulders slumped. "Maybe." I sighed, sitting back. "That's the problem, Vanessa. You only respect people you think you can't control." She flinched at that, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. The city buzzed faintly below, the hum of ambition echoing between us. "I'm not here to get revenge," I finally said. "But things are going to change." She straightened slightly, wary. "Change how?" I slid a folder toward her, not legal papers this time, but a list of conditions. "You can keep your office here and your tenants, but you'll start treating them with dignity. No more predatory rent hikes, no intimidation. You'll meet with each one, hear their concerns, and fix what's broken, starting with apartment 3B's leaking ceiling." Her brows knit together. "You know about that?" "I know everything that happens in my building," I said. "And you'll also donate 5% of your profits from your other properties to a women's housing initiative. I've already set up the fund. You'll contribute monthly." Vanessa's lips parted. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I replied. "You see, I don't need to ruin you, Vanessa. I just need you to learn." She looked down at her manicured hands, the silence heavy with realization. For once, she didn't argue. "And if I don't agree?" she asked quietly. I smiled, not cruelly, just certain. "Then you can vacate your office by Friday." Her chin trembled, pride and regret warring behind her eyes. Finally, she reached for the pen and signed. As I gathered the documents, she whispered, "You've really changed, Amber." I looked at her, the sister who once made me feel small, who now sat humbled in the empire she helped me build unknowingly. "No," I said gently. "I just stopped renting my power to people who couldn't afford it." She gave a shaky laugh, half in awe, half in surrender. "You sound like Mom." That caught me off guard. I smiled faintly, touching the bracelet on my wrist. She had a way of teaching lessons that stuck. Vanessa nodded, quiet now. There was something softer in her eyes, maybe respect, maybe remorse. Either way, it was enough. For the first time in years, I didn't see her as my rival. Just my sister, flawed, human learning. Over the next few months, I watched the slow transformation unfold like spring after a long winter. Vanessa showed up early to meetings, not in power suits, but in jeans and flats. She started walking the halls, talking to tenants, fixing leaks, repainting walls. The woman who once barked orders from her phone now carried a toolbox in her trunk. It wasn't perfect, she still had her sharp edges, but for the first time, she was trying. Sometimes, I'd catch her looking at me across the lobby with a strange mix of pride and guilt. She'd open her mouth like she wanted to say something, then close it again. I didn't push her. Growth isn't a performance, it's private work. One Friday evening, she knocked on my office door holding a manila envelope. "I finished the first donation transfer," she said softly. "And I visited Mom's old neighborhood. They're naming the new women's center after her." I froze, blinking back a rush of emotion. "You did that." She smiled, small and sincere. "You inspired me. Guess we're both owning something now." After she left, I sat alone, city lights blinking against the window. My reflection stared back, not the scared girl who once begged for mercy, but a woman who built her own space, her own worth, brick by brick. I unclasped the bracelet, running my fingers over the engraved words. Own your space, baby girl. Don't let anyone rent your worth. Mom's voice echoed through time, steady, loving, unyielding. For the first time, I truly understood her. I walked to the window, looking down at the street where I once felt invisible. Now, it all belonged to me, not because of money or deeds, but because I'd earned the right to stand there. Vanessa and I weren't perfect sisters. Maybe we never would be. But there was peace in the distance between us, not silence, just understanding. I smiled, whispering to the night. She tripled my rent, but I multiplied my worth. And with that, I turned off the lights, slipped on my coat, and walked out, heels clicking softly against the marble, echoing like a heartbeat through the building that now carried my name.